where does this masterpiece fall? Let's rank this film on the Cageometer.
Ratings. Vince, we'll start with you, arbitrarily forever. Where does the unbearable weight of massive talent rate on your Cageometer?
All right, so film, gonna give it an 8. I thought it was a really fun film. I love that it was meta. I really love that they poked fun at themselves, poked fun at the industry, and in a very playful, respectful way, poked fun at Nick and his career. Could have been tighter in some areas, like the third act got a little confusing, but like we said, maybe that was intentional. Maybe they were also poking fun at the fact that sometimes movies will move plot along with nonsense just to move it along and hope that people just kind of gloss over it. So who knows, I wish it was a little bit tighter because I felt like the rest of the film was really good, really tight.
Yeah, I gotta say, personally, I'm getting kind of sick of them doing that. Like we're making fun of this trope, but at the same time, it also makes the movie you're watching very confusing. Like Willy's Wonderland was a perfect example of
exactly.
Okay, we get that you're making fun of these tropes, but at the same time, your movie doesn't make any sense because of it. So you've got to ground it in some reality.
Compare it to something like Tropic Thunder, which I think is the pinnacle of how you can have a good movie, have it all make sense, and also
spoof
be action, fun of all
but
of
in
that.
a perfect way, a perfect satire.
I think like they could have tightened up the ending a little bit better. That's really my only complaint. Otherwise, I think they nailed what they exactly were trying to nail, and I think the relationship between Nick and Pedro's character really brought the movie together and held it together throughout the film of all with all the craziness that was going on. As far as Nick, I got to give him a 10 out of 10. I don't know how you don't give him a 10 out of 10. He managed to play himself without being too weird. I don't know how else to put it. I mean, like, he could have just gone way over the fucking top being himself, but I thought he brought a lot of heart and warmth to this character that is supposed to be him and, kind of played up. And I thought his chemistry with Pedro, I think, was incredible. I thought he did a great job at taking the few scenes that they had together and really building this friendship throughout the film that felt believable, so that at the end of the film, when they're in Hollywood together and they just made this huge hit, it felt good and it felt realistic. So got to give him a 10 out of 10. He nailed playing Nick Cage. It's the role he was born to play.
It's so kismet that this is his 100th movie too.
Yeah,
I would say
that's awesome.
Maybe that's why they released Prisoners of the Ghostland after having it sit on the shelf for all that time. Was like, well, that'll be 99 if Unbearable Weight's coming out next year. That'll be 100.
Yeah, I hope that's why.
Okay, Nigel, where does this movie land on your Cageometer?
It was all right, 7.
I would laugh if you were like, honestly, I liked Weatherman more.
No, I did like this more than Weatherman, but I honestly 7 is where it landed for me. I did like it was very meta. I like the metaphor aspect of it. I do like that it is like a love letter to Nicolas Cage. I felt like a lot of what he was giving across was authentic as far as we know from what we've seen of interviews from him and how he talks about himself and now acting and how he views his career and stuff. So I feel like it's a love letter to Nicolas Cage and also Nicolas Cage fans and Nicolas Cage movies. If you have watched as many movies as we have of his, there's definitely a lot of stuff you'll pull out of this that other people might not get. So, and you can tell that the creators of the movie are super fans as well. So they sort of inserted themselves in with the character of Javi, but also in how the movie itself is set up. You can tell that they are very knowledgeable in his work, and it's just it's fun all around to have that kind of a movie.
Yeah, you can tell that they really care about Nick in general. And like I watched the South by Southwest Q&A, and you could tell that there's like genuine love for Nick Cage the whole time. They really Javi is them for sure.
Yeah, I could see either one of them having a room full of memorabilia and all that stuff. You know, maybe that was their private collection of things. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, so where it kind of drags down for me is where it gets confusing in the third act, like we said. Again, we don't know if that was intended. It still kind of sours the experience a little bit for me because I was enjoying the buddy chemistry of the two of them and having this other stuff intrude, which I think is intentional. But I feel like they just kind of did it a little bit sloppier and things were confusing about it. Like what's going on with the Italian guy? Why is he not showing up, but there's a fake one showing up? And like what it was, I'm confused now just remembering it. Stuff,
You stumped yourself.
But I think they could have cleaned that up a little bit more. And again, brought it to a level of something like Tropic Thunder, where it's like, it's a perfect fusion of parody and a movie that stands alone, not just a movie that's making fun of its own tropes, but in a way where it's like, yeah, those tropes suck. Why are you putting them in the movie in a way that kind of makes your movie, suck because of it? Not suck. The movie didn't suck, but yeah. So, that's why I give it a 7 out of 10. It's worth the watch. It's enjoyable. I'll watch it again once I've watched more Nicolas Cage movies. I might enjoy it more that way, especially now that I know the overall story. I can piece together a little bit more what they were trying to do, and maybe the more confusing things make more sense in that light. But just there are certain things like the two CIA agents. I didn't think either one of them were funny, so they were dragging down the story even before we got to the point where all the meta stuff started intruding into it. So it's like, okay, and then they just sort of kill both of them, and they're out of the movie now, and it's like,
MacGuffin CIA agents.
Yeah. So again, the movie being a love letter to Nicolas Cage and all of his films, I really enjoyed that part of it. Being a send up to a bunch of action films and stuff, I didn't like that as much. I think they kind of dropped the ball a little bit with that. But still, good movie. Recommended. Nicolas Cage himself, I give him a 9 out of 10. For a lot of the same reasons Vince said, he played himself in a way that's very convincing and was probably pretty difficult for him, like we mentioned earlier, where like you have to walk that line of, do you act completely like yourself? Because then it's not going to seem like you're acting and the performance is going to look fake and stuff. So you got to at least have to ham it up a little bit in a way that's believable but entertaining. And I think he did that pretty well. Some of the emotional scenes I didn't get as emotional as I've gotten from other Nicolas Cage movies. So that's kind of where I don't give him a full 10 out of 10 on it, because I feel like he could have done better engaging us with that kind of emotional core that I think the movie was going for. Especially because of what we've seen him do in other movies where he's, definitely delivering on that. And that could just be, I don't know, the director's inexperience with stuff and doing that kind of thing. But it's also a comedy, so you got to keep it lighthearted and not full on drama. But still, he played himself, did a great job of it. Did a great job when he was playing himself, play somebody else, or when he was playing himself, talk to himself as a different version of himself. That was really fun. It's about as good of a Nicolas Cage performance as you can get out of a comedy that's poking fun of Nicolas Cage.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but also has a lot of heart in there, and you can tell that he put a lot of his heart into it as well.
Yeah. My Cageometer, I'll echo a lot of the same things. I also gave it a 7. I feel like, it has a lot of heart. I think the secret sauce of the whole movie is him and Pedro Pascal.
Yeah, definitely.
Together. I think some of the shortcomings might potentially be chalked up to the fact that this is like one of the first films that Tom Gormican has ever done, which is a hell of a first step out,
Yeah.
If you think about it in that terms. I mean, he has done films before and obviously is well respected in Hollywood. If they were going to give him a movie with Zac Efron, Michael B. Jordan, and I forget who else was in that movie, but that was like his Miles Teller. Yeah. Huge cast on that. And then they gave him $30 million to make this. So obviously there's a lot of trust in this guy and his vision. The only, the complaints I have are the same. The third act just kind of, is muddled and kind of confusing, and I do think that they were going for that specifically as, you know, the trope of action movies, and it turns into a blockbuster. And as soon as they say in the movie that it's turning into a blockbuster is the moment when things start to get confusing. And I think that they're going back to Nicolas Cage movies for that, which is funny, but at the same time, like I've said, like I just said, it's like you need to ground it in some reality for us to stay engaged. And you know, like Nigel said, with like Tropic Thunder and Pineapple Express is another movie where it's like they made fun of action movies but kept it engaging the whole time through and made you understand, you knew what was happening at any given moment. And this movie is like we're poking fun with, you know, making things muddled, but at the same time we're making it hard for you to even follow what the hell we're talking about. And
it was more difficult because what came before it was really great. Like the rest of the movie just being a character driven story about Nick Cage and Javi, you know, was so good to have him step away from it to do the typical Hollywood blockbuster thing. Even making fun of it, I just think that it brought the movie down a little bit.
I think that's kind of one of the things that they were going for in the movie was sort of let's span the genres that Nick Cage has done in the past, you know, with it being a heartfelt kind of character piece at the beginning and then kind of being a fun kind of buddy thing, which he hasn't done a ton of those types of like buddy stories, but and then turning into an action movie. It had to, but I feel like it could have been executed a little bit better. It's nitpicky, but you know, the onus is on the filmmakers rather than us. As far as Nick, I also gave him a 9. I feel like he did an amazing job in this, and this is one of the better performances we've seen out of him in a long, long time, aside from Pig, you know, which Pig will always be now kind of the pinnacle of like, we've seen what Nick Cage is capable of, and we can never quite give him that same rating. Unless he tops that or at least matches it. And I feel like he did in some ways, but he also, you know, like you said, he didn't draw you in quite as much as he potentially could have. But, you know, that's potentially more realistic of like, that's Nick Cage. That's who Nick Cage really is. And it's hard to give him a 9 when he's playing himself. You know? But like, I don't know. I did love the Nicky character, and that's another thing that brings it down from a 10 to a 7. Was the effects were a little bit. They were a little too noticeable for me at times. There's like one scene where they're looking at each other in the car, and it just felt like there was some real uncanny valley stuff going on with young Nicky that like completely pulled me out of it. It reminded me of like when Carrie Fisher shows up in Rogue One, where I'm like, what is that abomination? You know, didn't feel like a real human. Which, you know, they were making him thinner and they had to make him younger, and they filmed him at completely different times. I watched the behind the scenes because he had to shave in order to do those other young Nicky scenes. And then when he's acting opposite himself, it was interesting because they just got a guy who kind of looked like Nick Cage to sit next to him. And then I always wondered how they did this, but they had like an earpiece. So he's hearing his delivery as Nick Cage when he's playing Nicky, which he did after the fact. So
I think part of it's also like his voice doesn't match the younger version. Like it's still his modern 60-year-old voice. It does at
times, though. I heard, like, especially when he smacks him in the neck in the black and white scene, that sounded like young Nick Cage. But earlier, like when he's like, "I'm trying to help you," or,
there's certain
in that
parts,
same scene, he sounds exactly the same in both ones. So, you know, what can you do? I guess, but
But I think that contributes to that uncanny valley of like, I'm supposed to be looking at a younger Nicolas Cage, but it's obviously a CG face, and then he has older Nick Cage voice in some parts, and you know, it just sort of makes things not quite click.
Yeah, I think for the most part, though, he did capture the mannerisms and the feel of young Nick Cage, especially like going back to, I'm trying to think. I mean, really, the Wogan interview. He kind of captured that same vibe and his movements and his zaniness that he had. I don't know if that was like I've speculated that it was coked up Nick Cage.
Yeah.
But, I don't know for sure. He's never really talked much candidly about his harder drugs. He's definitely talked about alcohol and all that kind of stuff, but not so much on the harder drug stuff. So I can't confirm that he was on coke, but he really seems like he's on coke in that interview.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyways, great performance. And I feel like Nick is kind of still on this renaissance path of like, this harkens back to those great performances that he's given in the past that he didn't quite give during that dark period of, the 2010, 11-ish until about 2020.
Yeah.
And like, we go to like Willy's Wonderland or Prisoners of the Ghostland, where it's like, he didn't bring this performance at all in those movies.
No.
And it's sad too, because it's like, I have to assume that he didn't bring that performance because he didn't really care about it as much.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Or he's just playing that character, and the character that he's playing in those films doesn't have the gravitas of actual Nicolas Cage. But I still feel like 9 out of 10 is pretty high marks for him in this film. He doesn't get to flex the comedy chops as much as he should. I feel like he had like Raising Arizona and stuff like that when he was first starting out. He was able to be comedic, and he does occasionally in his action movies, but like I don't feel like Nick Cage gets to be funny as much as he should, because he is genuinely super funny. Now, hopefully that's what Renfield is. Yeah,
it's supposed to be a comedy, right?
It's supposed to be a comedy. Yeah. But I'm so happy for him that he finally gets to play Dracula.
Play Dracula,
because that he's been wanting to forever.
I know.